Hello everybody, welcome to The Take. I'm your host Krishna Mano, and in the first episode since our rebranding, we will be talking about the elephant in the room. Oh, not that one. Sorry, Wilbur. But rather the one that has been an issue for decades, but has become increasingly common in recent months. War refugees, and especially those who are impacted the most. Children. Let's get started. The most recent flood of war refugees has been due to the Ukraine-Russian conflict, where the BBC reports there have been 6 million refugees as of May 10th, 2022. And those still in Ukraine have faced harsh cold temperatures, starvation due to limited supplies, and inhumane war crimes that no person should ever have to face, like mass genocide, assaults on women, children, and innocent civilians, as well as brutal murders. To put it simply, a country living its own life with leading agricultural exports and technological advancements was ripped apart by a war that they never asked for. But those who are waging this war are world leaders looking to expand their territory, religious leaders aiming to forcefully spread their beliefs, business owners and oligarchs working to expand their bank accounts, and the list goes on and on. However, this list does not include a certain demographic, one that is known to be the most innocent people on this planet. Children. Well, innocent except for when they cry and drool all over you. But all jokes aside, kids never create wars, at least not intentionally. Yet they're impacted just the same as, if not more than, adults. And while they go through atrocities that they never asked for, very rarely do you stumble upon an article referencing these experiences from the eyes of children. At this point, you just have to ask why. Well, let's figure it out together. First, we must ask how conflicts and wars start in the first place. And before we get there, we must define wars.
Quick interruption. I know you said you wanted to get in-depth into topics, but don't you think this is a bit too much?
Good point, Benny. I know it seems pretty basic, but it is essential to getting to the bottom of today's topic.
Are you sure about that? 'Cause I'm pretty sure that everyone knows what wars are. You know what wars are, right? Yeah. See? Nothing. Sorry. Did not say a word at all.
Where was I? Definitions. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, a war is a fight between two or more countries or groups of people over a period of time. And although we can't pinpoint any exact reasons for these wars to occur in the first place, the most primary are competition over land, economic gains, religious conflicts, and nationalism. The most current conflict we're seeing with Russia's invasion on Ukraine is a perfect example of waging war to gain land, not necessarily for territorial expansion, but as a buffer zone. You see, if Russia successfully captures Ukraine, they can use that as a sort of gateway into the rest of Europe. But that's a whole nother topic. Now that we have the basics out of the way, I cannot emphasize this enough, but these wars are detrimental to all who have to experience it, but mostly children. And unlike finding an exact reason for a war to happen, it is very easy and straightforward to list its unforgiving impacts. In the short term, children have to go through potential death, injury, disability, illness, among countless other situations that are more pressing than your phone being dead or your cabinet having no granola bars left.
Today's been a terrible day.
You think, Johnny? Well, imagine that being the case every day, but 10 times worse. And these experiences have a negative influence on kids in the long term as well. These children's minds are exposed to severe losses and disruptions to their quotidian life cycle, causing depression, anxiety, and PTSD in their future life. And even if they are lucky enough to have a mental defense force field protecting their emotions, their education and future careers are absolutely ruined. Without a stable education, let alone extracurriculars, going to college will be nearly impossible, leaving a huge portion of the future employed generation unprepared for their careers. My vague explanation of this is supported by the detailed terms of Susan Rakib from the Human Rights Watch when she wrote, "Worldwide, 250 million children live in areas affected by armed conflict. 1 in 4 of these children is not in school. Conflicts disrupt children's education and cause destruction of school infrastructure. In an environment of violence and fear, school attendance and education quality can decline, and schools might even shut down. These effects are disproportionately felt by girls, as they're also more prone to attacks and assaults." To those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, this means that there are over 60 million child war refugees who don't have an education. That's 60 million less people in the workforce who could have been the next Steve Jobs or Tom Brady if they had the proper training as a kid. And if you're still confused, just follow my actions. And the American Psychological Association dives deep into its psychological effects.
Well, what else did you expect them to research? They literally have psychological in their name.
Benny, just listen to the quote, okay?
Jeez, I was just telling you the facts. You don't have to jump at me for everything.
Anyways, the APA finds armed conflict destroys the basic necessities of life: schools, healthcare, adequate shelter, water, and food. That makes it difficult for communities to give children an environment that fosters healthy cognitive and social development. I don't want to sound like Mr. Doomsday over here, but we kinda sorta got to bring it up if we want to sustain as a world. Trust me, we're not trying to make it worse than it seems. It's really that bad. The fact that this lack of basic resources for millions of children in war-torn countries affects them throughout their life is, bad. Benny, I need synonyms for bad, now.
Synonyms you want, synonyms you will get. Okay, so we have appalling, abominable, lamentable, inadequate, not up to snuff. What are these? These are terrible synonyms.
Actually, you are the terrible helper, Benny. You know what? We'll talk about it later. Forget it. You get the point. There's nothing to describe the impacts that conflict can have on a child as they continue with life. And right when you think things can't get any worse, things get worse. War experiences don't just stop with haunting children throughout their adulthood. Intergenerational trauma is a thing too, which is exactly what it sounds like. Trauma passed on through several generations.
I'm sure. Do you hear this guy? He's saying that trauma can be passed on through generations. How laughable.
Don't be a hater, Benny. Although it has been disputed, there is ongoing research to prove this theory. In October of 2018, Californian researchers found that male children of abused Civil War prisoners were 10% more likely to die than their peers were in any given year after middle age. The New York Times links this to an epigenetic explanation. Trauma can leave a chemical mark on a person's genes, which then is passed down to subsequent generations. The mark doesn't directly damage the gene, so it is not genetic. Instead, it alters the mechanism by which the gene is converted into functioning proteins or expressed, making it epigenetic. In terms of intergenerational trauma in wars specifically, the best examples, according to Psychiatric Services, are Southeast Asian refugees of the Vietnam-American War, a conflict that accounted for 3 million Vietnamese deaths. A 2015 follow-up study of Cambodian refugees in America found that 97% met the criteria for PTSD. And there's not much to think about when you recognize that adults use children when they need us for symbolic values, whether it be bolstering election campaigns or as human shields for protection during wars, and forget about us when they want the focus to be on them. And this whole forgetting thing isn't really going to work out because the future of the world is kind of sort of going to be run by the kids of the present. So leaders, just a recommendation, you might want to start thinking about how waging your economic, political, and religious battles will impact the ones in charge of carrying on your legacy. And thankfully, a couple of government officials have started doing that. Just a few days ago, Jill Biden, the First Lady of the US, had visited Ukraine and the Ukrainian First Lady to celebrate Mother's Day. After talking with other mothers who had children of their own to care for during the war, the First Lady wrote in an opinion article. She told me of the many children who had seen people shot and killed, their homes burned. I want to return home quickly, she told me. I only want to hold the hands of my children. This is exactly what we need, people. Leaders who have power stepping up and looking at things from our point of view. And before we wrap it up, let's be honest. We've heard the term countries impose sanctions on Russia on the news hundreds of times, but there's an even larger underlying problem here that cannot be stopped by sanctions. Even though corruption and seeking personal profit leads to wars which displace lives, harming innocent children ends them. Not only is the common man being affected by the works of billionaires who bought their way into leadership, young kids like me who have a whole future set up in front of them yearn to see light at the end of the tunnel. But the cement walls of this tunnel are very dramatically crumbling down, and for many, before they can escape. And you know what? I'm gonna make a promise here. I refuse to talk to this elephant until we take care of the other elephant in the room. Sorry about that.
Whoa, wait a second. Does that mean you talk to your stuffed animals on a regular basis?
No, not at all. We don't talk about that. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, stay safe and read the news.